Hello, everyone. Welcome to our new channel, Counterintel 419, Counterintelligence. This is a show that will focus on bringing you information that counters some of the myths and disinformation that is overwhelmingly disseminated throughout our community. We will also challenge some of the lies, propaganda, and the omissions of truth and information that is critical to our history as well as what's going on today. This show is for educational purposes, and before we get started, make sure you share, like, and most of all, subscribe to this channel. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Counterintel 419, Counterintelligence. I'm your host, Albert Earl, and today we have an amazing show for you today. As you all know, we are 15 days away from probably the most important election in our lifetime. And it is very important, number one, that we all get out and vote. But I will also add to that is to make sure you clearly understand what's at stake and who you voting for. But we have some very, very special guests with us today that I think can help bring light to not only some of the issues, but the importance of why we should be out in mass numbers, especially the Black community, when it comes to voting. And I want to introduce my very lovely guests. First, I'd like to introduce to my right, Miss Paula Hicks Hudson, State Senator of District 11, and also Miss Petee Talley, who is Executive Director of the Ohio Unity Coalition. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's not play around with this. Let's get into what's going on.
Let's talk.
I'll put the first question out there that I know a lot of young people is asking. Why do we say this might be the most important election in our lifetime?
Well, for me, it's important because I am in the trenches in Columbus, where I know that if we don't change the way that maps are drawn, that would really reflect how the state really is. You know, this whole idea that Ohio is a red state isn't true. We're a purple state. And if we don't get people elected past issue 1 to change the way things are voting, then, you know, we are in a big problem in the state of Ohio. I'm talking from the state level. From the federal level, you know, we have a chance to either elect someone who is qualified or someone who's been convicted. And I think for a nation that is based upon principle and rule of law, we want someone that's qualified, who understands what the law is.
Now, you know, I want to go back to something you just said, because I've never heard anyone say that, purple state. Why you say we are purple state?
When you look at the last 2 elections that we had on issues, the one was the reproductive rights. The second one was on about not allowing the change in how people can put initiatives on the ballot. Those came out with 52% in favor of those. And so that makes us more purple than red. And you also look at the fact that, you know, Ohio elected President Obama 2 times. They voted for Trump 2 times. So if we were totally a red state or totally a blue state, it would be, you know, at that level, it would be the Democrat, or be the Republican.
Absolutely.
The lie that's being told about why we're red is that right now the state office holders, the majority in this House and in the Senate, are Republicans. And if we are not careful and not elect, you know, a balanced court, we're going to have a Republican Supreme Court that's going to continue to rubber stamp what I consider illegal actions done by the legislature. So I also say that we're not a red state, we're a rigged state, because the way the maps have been drawn these last 2 times have made sure that you don't have fair representation.
So
That's a lot.
I know it's a lot, but
yeah, but it's the truth.
but so I want to take out some of the key things that you said when you talk about illegal mapping.
Yes.
Kind of explain that, because like some of the people don't actually understand it. Explain that, how that affects our vote and how it would affect us moving forward.
The best example, and I have to thank my sister here for doing the work, the data to really show what the problem is. My district, where we are sitting right this minute, was not in District 11 for the 2022 election. So people who could, and that was my race for the Senate. So people, 38,000 people in pretty much the city of Toledo, Lucas County primarily, but primarily central city of Toledo, were not able to vote for me in 2022.
Wow.
Because that year, the odd number district Senate races were up. This year, the even number districts are up. So those 38,000 people that were in District 2 in 2022 have now been placed back into District 11 for the 2024 election. So they don't get to vote this year again. So the last time they voted for a state senator was Teresa Fetter's race. And so that's only part of it. The Supreme Court said seven times that those maps were unconstitutional. 7 times. And they were able to, the majority was able to stall and hold off in doing the process, so that the federal court said we've got to go forward with maps or else we don't have congressional races. So all this stuff that's going on was done because you had the Ohio Supreme Court say they were illegal.
The Republican-controlled Supreme Court ruled that the maps that the Republican office holders voted for in 2022, on the redistricting commission of 7, were 5 Republicans, 2 Democrats. The Republicans voted for the maps. The Democrats voted against the maps. They filed a challenge to the state Supreme Court, which was controlled by Republicans at the time. And they ruled it 7 times that those maps that the Republicans voted for were in fact not fair, not according to the criteria that is set out in the Constitution.
So that's where a citizen like myself gets very mind-boggled. Because how can someone break the law if the Supreme Court ruled it illegal?
Correct.
How's this happening? Because, matter of fact, in this, it actually does kind of have something to do with what we're talking about. I was just on a YouTube with a Supreme Court Judge Mike Donnelly, and the question came up about the way public schools is funded. Was ruled back in what, 95, 96, that it was unconstitutional. And so the question was, how can this remain this long when the Supreme Court already ruled? And it's the same thing with this mapping. Like, I don't get it.
Thank God, though, our Constitution, the Ohio State Constitution, gives the citizens some power, right? Because as long as it's held at the politician level, that's why you have the Roth decision still hanging out there so many years later. The citizens of the state of Ohio have the ability to take issues that when the politicians in Columbus don't do what they should do in terms of the law, that the citizens have the power of the initiative process, that they, in fact, can go get the signatures that are required to get an issue on the ballot and then have the voters to decide. Really, which is the crust of issue 1 in this election cycle. The citizens are saying, okay, in 2015, we thought that we put enough criteria in place for the politicians to do the right thing. 2015, 2018. We saw what happened in 2022. Senator Hicks Hudson just described what happened. So now we are saying, okay, we can't trust the politicians right now.
Right.
They are going to do what's in their best interest. And so we have in the Constitution the citizens' ability to get an issue on the ballot. And that's what we did with issue 1. Went out, got enough signatures. Issue 1 will be on the ballot. And what issue 1 will do is take the politicians out of the redistricting drawing process and turn that role over to citizens. And we think, Al, we're going to get a more common sense approach.
Correct.
Absolutely.
To how Ohio is represented. It's not that we didn't have a voice in the process. We went to Columbus and we testified and we talked about those maps that they presented were not keeping communities of interest together. It broke off, and split communities down the middle of the street. People live on one side of the street in one district, on the other side. We gave all that testimony, but the politicians who are intent on keeping power for themselves and not doing representing the people, they wouldn't listen. The Supreme Court kind of held it out. And the only reason we had the maps we had, as Senator indicates, is because we had a federal election in 2022. And so we have the ability now as citizens, and thank goodness we do in our Constitution, to go directly to the people and say, what do you want? How do you want Ohio to look? What kind of maps do you want Ohio to have? And then they can draw those maps according to the criteria.
Okay. So issue 1 is one of the main issues that we definitely need to make sure that we understand and get our vote out for.
I'm going to just say, I serve on the ballot board, and the ballot board is this. It's a creature of the state of Ohio, where we set out to put out the language for the ballot, so that the language would make sense. It was purposefully made to be so confusing and written in such a way so that people will say, I don't want gerrymandered maps. And that's language that's in the language that's going to appear when you get your ballot. That was done purposely so people will be confused. And I serve on the ballot board there. And again, the vote is 3. There's 5 members, 3-2. And along party lines, they amended it to make it more egregious, more confusing, and trying to skew an answer. So a lot of people think that this is going to make maps worse. No, this is going to make maps better, because it's going to take it out of the hands of the folks who have their own interest in keeping power. And there's no way quickly about it. 88 counties, they got enough signatures from all 88 counties within the state of Ohio because of this. And that's the thing that to me is a testament that people want fairness. And if you think about any game, when the ref is making calls that favor one team versus the other team, everybody's upset. That's what's happening here now. The Republicans that are in power, they're making the rules such that they stay in power,
for sure,
and they don't care about people.
Wow. So that's one issue.
To me, that's the big issue.
It's a very big issue. What other concerns in terms of this election that's important that you want to talk about today that the people should know about?
For me, I think it's just making sure that we understand, as citizens, as voters, as Black voters, we got some power. We do have skin in this game, but we don't have the skin in the game if we are not coming out and voting, right? We can't say my vote. If we're saying my vote doesn't matter, you're right. If you're going to stay home, if you're not coming out and participating in the process, you're allowing someone else to determine what is important. And if you have issues, if you have concerns about the way you want to live, the way you want your community to look, what kind of schools your kids go to, what kind of services that we get from our government, we pay taxes.
Yes.
I mean, we have a right to say what we want. And the only way we can say that is through the power of our vote. That makes everybody on election day, everybody's the same. One person, one vote. But if you're not going to exercise your vote, the things that you don't want to see in your community, they're going to win every time because you didn't get in the game. So to me, the issues are important, but we can only pass issues if we come out and vote. We can't do it if we're at home talking about it. Don't matter.
And if you think about, and I'm with Petee 100% on that. If you think about that, if your vote didn't matter, there wouldn't be a constant process to try to make it harder for you to vote.
Absolutely.
I mean, if it didn't count, then why would the Secretary of State now make it so that you can't take your wife's ballot and drop it in the ballot box? If it was a absentee ballot, don't try to drop somebody else's at the polls. But if you have an absentee ballot, you now need to sign some stupid affidavit to show that the person gives you permission to drop that in the ballot. I'm making it very basic, but what's that about? You are a valid voter. You for whatever reason, you either put it in the mail and you got some stranger from the post office. Not that the post office, I love all post folks, but they're going to do it. So your ballot there, what's it to let a loved one, a family member do it? The disability community sued the Secretary of State about that directive. The Supreme Court said, oh, well, it's too late because they're already implementing that directive. That's why it's important that we have a Supreme Court that's independent, that's going to follow the law, and then also that we have people voting up and down the ticket. Don't just vote for the president and say, oh, I'm good. If you don't know who these other candidates are, you need to be prepared going in to know, about the justices, about the Congress people, about whoever is on the ballot, and about the issues that are on the ballot.
Absolutely. So
I know I got it.
no, I mean that was fine. So I was thinking while you was talking about that would hurt those who are sick.
Yes.
Those who have special needs.
Yes.
Why would you even consider putting that in place?
Because you want to stay in power.
Yes.
And you want the party that you represent to be in power. This is really about power. It's a power struggle. And people have power. We got power too, y'all. We're the voters. We got the power, but only if we use it.
Right.
And we're not using our power. Part of the reason the gerrymander maps is true. We are a gerrymandered state, but we probably would not have gotten to be so gerrymandered if voters were coming out and voting, because politicians pay attention to two things.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Money and votes. And if you're not voting, they're not paying attention to you.
This is a data-driven world, and they pay attention to it.
Two things.
Yeah.
And they can look and see who's voting and who's not. And when Senator Hicks Hudson talks about 38,000 people being moved out of her district into a different district, the majority of those 38,000 were Central Toledo residents who only vote occasionally. They don't vote in every election. They only vote occasionally. So the drawers of the map looked at, we can move these voters any kind of way we want to. And they moved us out, and then they moved us back in. And that not only led to gerrymandering, it led to disenfranchisement, because I haven't had a chance to vote on a state senate term since 2018.
Yeah.
Simply, how does that sound?
How does that sound?
That don't even make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And so the drawers of the maps, they didn't care.
That's right.
That they were taking away my ability to elect somebody.
So, and I said this before. I know you guys heard me say this before. It has to be intentional.
Oh, absolutely.
That our young people that is about to start voting, the young people who are kind of jaded with voting and don't understand that we have conversations and education going on year round before it get to the election process.
Absolutely.
So that they would know this.
That's
and
right.
It seems to me, and I you know, that a lot of this comes out during election season. We got to really consider, okay, yeah, I'm not going to say I know everything when it comes to politics, but I know that I'm probably more educated than the average person. But I also know that there's a lot of people that don't have a clue. They listen to whatever person they want to listen to, and whoever sound good, that's who they rolling with. So we have to do a much better job in terms of being able to educate our young people about this process. And something else you said I want to bring back. I always say we got to do a better job of telling our kids why it's important to vote and stop using the people died for the right to vote. But at the same time, the fact that people did die should tell you why your vote must have power.
Yes.
Let me tell you real quickly a story that, because, I still practice law. And I had a young man who had gotten a charge out in one of the suburban courts. And when he came to me, I said, well, I think probably we might have to go, 2 or 3 times at the most, because, the victim wasn't going to show up. The victim showed up one time. We worked out a deal. My guy did what he was supposed to do. We go back second time. I said, are we going to dismiss? Victim's not here. Oh, no, we got to do it again. Come back a third time. I'm gonna get the prosecutor. Why can't we get this dismissed? Oh, there's we got to go through this extra because this is the court's rules. The 4th or 5th time, the guy comes with his brother, and the brother says to me, if he comes back out here, he's going to lose his job. So I said at that point, and it just struck me, I said, are you registered to vote? And my client said, oh, I'm not really registered. I said, well, if you had been registered to vote, do you know that you have the right to vote on this judge? Because you live in this jurisdiction and you don't like the judge's policies. You can vote against him and put somebody else in who understands what it is for somebody who has a job that's working, who doesn't need to be coming back 3 or 4 times. That's what we have to do. We have to show people how their vote impacts their daily lives. We can, that's just one simple example. We can talk at the state level about, you talked about, education. They are dismantling education. About that that the Attorney General has said that they will not allow race. I'm going to say race-based, but scholarships that were based upon giving to a student because of either race or gender. Those are all been stopped. The University of Toledo is sitting on thousands of scholarship money that they can't disperse because the Attorney General put out a rule and said, if you give this money out, and you're sued, we're not going to defend you. That's the kind of stuff that folks need to know, because it's affecting us straight up.
So let me ask you to do this. Explain that a little deeper so that the listening audience can understand so if you was to give me a $10,000 scholarship,
and I gave it to the university for a African American who went to Rogers High School,
right,
and is going to go into pre-law, they will not give that scholarship
because
to an African
American. Clearly said African American.
Yes.
That's what I want. That's what I wanted you to.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I have represented folks I helped them set up those scholarships, and now they cannot be, they're being asked to allow the university to change the nature of it so they can disperse that scholarship.
And quite possibly it's an overreach, right? So this is coming from the decision of the United States Supreme Court, which ruled, what is the name of the case that they ruled on diversity, equity, and inclusion?
They just did it.
Affirmative action, right? And so Yost, our Attorney General, is extending the decision that came out of the Supreme Court to suggest that these scholarships now are somehow or another caught up in the Supreme Court ruling about admissions. right?
So I can't help someone in my community with my money because it's considered.
You could if you don't go through the university. So you could directly give that scholarship to whomever you want.
Absolutely.
To.
But I'm saying if I went through the university.
Right. But see, for me, it's not only you, but you went into a contract with the university for them to hold your money, to invest your money, and to use it for what you wanted it to be done. And so then you've got, okay, I know I'm getting into it. And then you've got this attorney general who, as Petee said, overreached to stop it
for his own
person. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to, being able to erase some people, being able to sideline some voices that may be different than yours. It's a power move. They want to be in power over a lot of pieces of our lives. Yes. I mean, the whole reproductive freedom battle. I mean, why are politicians telling women what to do with their body? I mean, we are at a very critical crossroad in this country. And I think the voters have the power to determine the direction that we want to go in. We just got to lean into that. Because if we don't, somebody else will. And then we get what we have.
Absolutely. So we got another issue at stake here. Project
2025.
2025. Yes. There's something that you said prior to us beginning the show. This is not something new.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So that needs to be explained to the people. This has been something that's been in existence for a long time.
It's a culmination of a 50-year plot under something called a master plan that the Heritage Foundation, a conservative-leaning think tank, has been envisioning the America that they think is good for everybody, right? They envision plans that kill off like climate regulations or pollution laws, right? That raise taxes, right? And do all kinds of different kinds of things, right? And so they've been working on iterations of policy, Project 2025, going back as far as 50 years ago. And the question is, would they have been able to take their plan and come and lobby, right? Members of the Senate or the House or even the president about adopting portions in that plan. And presidents so far have not taken it. Ronald Reagan kind of came close to it, right? He kind of started biting off a little bit pieces of it when we started to have a lot of the deregulation and shutting down unions and all of that stuff. But you haven't really had a president that will take it full tilt until now. Until now. And so the Project 2025 has the ear of what could be a Trump administration if Trump is put back in office, right?
Right.
They have some inside way to advance that agenda more aggressively than we have ever seen from the Heritage Foundation, and that is very scary. I haven't read the 900 pages of it. I've only seen highlights, and from what the highlights that we see, it is very, very, very unrecognizable about what our country and what our government could be if this if portions of the Project 2025 are enacted. And so
like, let me ask you about one part. Totally dismantling the Department of Education.
Yes.
Petee, the look. I'm gonna let you answer that question. Well, not answer, but give your opinion on that, because the look on your face.
I mean, how could we do that? I mean, or even a program like Head Start, right?
Yes.
I mean, people need services from their government. That's why we're paying taxes, right? We need services. We need systems that kind of get at the question of that we all can be access our government equally. And Department of Education or the Department of Housing and Urban Development, those programs are designed to help everybody.
Absolutely.
Right?
So to dismantle that would mean what to you?
To dismantle the Department of Education,
yes.
to doing away with public education.
They would move it back to the state.
Back to the states.
And
we already have. I'll let.
Okay, I was going to say we are, because in Ohio, parts of what I talked about with the college scholarship, that's part of 2025 Ohio style.
Mm-hmm.
What it is, by dismantling at the federal level, you'll just have each state doing its own thing as it relates to education. There, there's a lot of funds that come back to through the Department of Education for, like, the Head Start, for the other pieces of education. Those would go away. So it'd be on the backs of the states to have public education. So we might have one set of education in Ohio, and then in Indiana be something different. So what's the playing field, the leveling of the playing field for our children if we do that?
Especially when you talk about poor children.
Absolutely.
And needing Head Start.
Yes.
Especially when you talk about, if you go to the SHOT report that has indicated for the last 10, 15 years that many of our children, particularly African-American boys, is not reading at a proficient level,
right?
Even at entering the 8th grade level, which we know that can be devastating, because now they're going into high school the next year. And we do know that based on third grade reading scores, this is not a conspiracy, right, that, based on those test scores, they can predict how many prison beds can be built in the future. So to dismantle the department, to even be thinking about that after we talked about this right after we just came out of COVID, we saw what that did to the school system.
Absolutely.
And it could be very similar in the sense, because now everybody has to start anew, and it would devastate.
If you are think about this, because as we talk about 2025, and we keep going forward with this, the whole premise is to turn us back to when it was you had the really rich, and you have the really, really poor.
Yeah.
And that's where the in order for you to vote, you had to own property, you had to be a white male. I mean, it's not going to go back. They're not going to try to go back that far.
Well,
I'm not so sure that we may not end up that way, because if you don't have the skills right now, like this young man who's putting all this together for us, if he didn't have the necessary skill and the ability to problem solve, then we wouldn't be doing this podcast.
Absolutely.
And so maybe he might be, doing something that requires less skill. I see this as furthering having the 1%. Remember the whole thing about 1% versus the 99%.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think that this 2025 is going to do. It's going to make people more dependent upon the working poor, and the rich folks can continue to be rich. Power, in this day and time, money is power.
Right.
And so when you have this, to me, this whole idea going forward, 2025 is so dangerous on so many levels. We talk about education, we talk about housing, healthcare, defense, where they want to use the if you don't agree with what the government is saying, whatever the government is, then they can force the military to come and arrest you on U.S. soil. Yeah. That's the kind of crazy stuff that's part of 2025.
Also, you alluded to it in a sense, what you just said, removing Obamacare, yeah, or just playing games with healthcare. Period.
Yeah.
When you have people who have better healthcare because of the position that they're in, why wouldn't they want their citizens who they serve to have health care? I don't get that. Or some good health care. I don't get that. Well, yes, I do. I get it. They the people that we just need to get out of office.
Absolutely.
They just got to go.
They got to go.
And it's another thing that I saw in that in the video that I talked about, which we're going to show clips of that after the podcast. Keep our viewers on locked and loaded, just about 8 to 10 minutes longer. But the
it's mind-boggling.
The language in there to remove the right to discriminate. They no longer have to have discriminatory language in when you firing someone. Right. I might be saying that wrong, but taking out the language,
there will be no protections now. There's no they're trying to remove the protections that you can't be fired because you're a woman that you're black, you have a disability, or any of those things that have been protected for so long. They want to get rid of all that. Get
rid of all the protections for that.
Yes.
And so when in the video, one gentleman was reading it, he looked up and said, "Oh no, we can't have that." But it's a lot of people that don't know that this exists in that language, and that it's directly is going to impact us. So to that, when we talk about things that's going to impact us, some people would like to say, man, y'all playing the race card or this, that, and the other. But the reality is that when we say it's going to impact Black people, we're not saying it's not going to impact other people.
That's right.
It's just going to impact us even worse because of the position that we're already in.
We're already behind.
Right, right. Exactly. And so there's clearly not equity.
That's right.
On many levels.
That's right.
And so this is really going to just totally.
Right. And we get caught up, the unfortunate, I think one of the things my organization is going to commit to do is to do civic engagement outside of election cycles, because when we wait until there's an election and then, we almost kind of like come in like the boogeyman. It's like, oh, all these bad things are going to happen. And they are, but we should be educating people in January about why it's important to continue. If you vote in this election, vote in 2025, vote in 2026, vote in 2027, in every election cycle, because there's something happening in the public policy arena every single day that is impacting the lives. And we get caught up with the presidential, and we've got to do better. So my organization is going to commit to work in the communities where we are with our partners and say, what should be different? We've got to make sure we're educating our younger generations on what they need to be understanding about their power and how they can use that power to make their lives better.
Knowledge is power. And one of the things, besides voting and knowing how government works, that's just it. We need to know how government works at every level. You need to know what the city government does, what's their role. State government, how do they fit in the mix, and the federal government. Then you also have these other side kinds of things like, folks, if you understand how the school board operates, at the state level, the governor got rid of the state elected school board. Didn't get rid of it, got rid of took most of their power away and created the Department of Education and Workforce Development. So and that when they added the language about workforce development, that said that they're going to be shifting some of their focus from just educating but to also workforce development. And I keep trying to figure out, what does that actually mean, workforce development? Because no one has really given me a clear definition of it. But what I see that they're doing is, again, working to dismantle some of the things that have helped our community move ahead. Because we grew up knowing that education was the key to so many things. And so if our kids at third grade are not being able to read proficiently, and there's no funding from the feds to help cover those costs, then those kids are going to be left behind. And then you're right, the prison pipeline is going to just have a even more steady stream.
Broader highway.
Broader highway. Yeah, great. I mean, those are the things that, and Petee is absolutely right. We can't wait until it's time for an election. 365, we should be talking about voting, about civic engagement, what it is. when I was on city council, I begged people to come, not to the city council meeting, but go to the committee meetings. Watch them on TV so you know what's happening. So you don't have to try to figure out what the blade is or isn't saying. You know yourself because you're sitting in that room.
Absolutely.
And I have seen when folks show up in the council chambers, everybody gets nervous because they can't do stuff in the, in the light, but really in the dark.
Absolutely.
And as citizens, we can call for meetings with elected officials, whether or not your person wins the election or not. If that person is your representative, call on them and say, hey, what are you doing about A, B, and C? So even if elections are won or lost based on the partisan construction of who wins and who loses, we still have power because we can lean in and say, hey, we want to meet with you about your agenda for our community.
Okay. So I want to shift gears real quick. I want us to debunk or challenge some of the stuff that's being said on the federal level when it comes to the presidential race. I just think we need to have a quick conversation in regards to some of the things that may have concerned you, and I'll start with some of the things that concern me. The first thing, let me just say this. I don't care who you vote for. I know who I'm voting for. And because just to be frank with you, the guy that's representing the Republican Party, he's not an option for me. But he hasn't been an option for me since when he was elected. When I heard him with my own ears said, grab a woman by, y'all know what the rest of the line was. Right. It was over with. I was done with him then. Because I actually thought, I'm like, oh, I know he gonna drop out the race, but we know what happened. But anyway, he's not an option. But these things is going around like it should be things that we should be concerned with, whether we should vote for Vice President Harris is crazy. First thing, what in the world we debating whether she black? To me, that was like one of the dumbest conversations ever. Because at the end of the day, we can all look and we know based on the history, if you don't want to call her black, you know doggone well she in the diaspora.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about?
Right.
The difference between her and us is her grandparents got off the boat a little sooner.
Yep.
That's the only difference.
Yeah, it shouldn't even be about, I mean, there's a voter guide that people should get a hold of and just like look at some of the issues in terms of a comparison of where folks, I mean, there's issues about, abortion, climate change, criminal justice, economy, education, elections, gun laws, healthcare, labor. It says what one candidate's position is and what the other's candidate's is. And so if you believe in this candidate's where he stands on the issues, then vote for him.
Right.
But look at the issues and do a comparison about what is what. And, for me, I'm with you, Al. I'm clear on who I'm voting for. I've seen, the Biden-Harris administration deliver on some things in the last 4 years that I never would have thought would have happened. I never thought in my lifetime that I would see a Black woman on the United States Supreme Court, but they were able to deliver that. That was important to me as a Black woman, right? It was also important that I'm looking at student debt relief. Yeah.
Right.
And I went to school as a non-traditional student to the University of Toledo and had a mountain of debt, right? And when they started the repayments after the pandemic, I got a letter from the Department of Education and it laid on my mantle for weeks because I didn't want to open it because I knew I was going to have to start paying, right? I finally opened the letter because I had heard some rumblings about student debt being relieved. I opened the letter and there it said, the Biden-Harris administration had forgiven my student loans. So I have some receipts in this, in terms of, you know, looking at candidates that deliver on issues that are important to me. And that's what we should be looking at.
And a part of in the 2025 project, that's one of the issues. They want to remove that.
Exactly.
That's right.
I mean, why wouldn't we give relief to people who were caught up in a system of predatory lending?
Right.
Say that again.
That was predatory lending, right?
Yes.
I mean, I was paying, you know, my interest rate was more than the loan itself.
That's
right. And there was no end in sight.
Wow.
And so we have to be smart and really go do the research and see who is addressing these issues that we care about, and then make your decision from there. Don't make an uninformed decision.
And one of the issues that you brought up, criminal justice reform. So I saw a young man speaking to the fact that she wanted to get marijuana at the federal level. She wants to get that decriminalized, right? So there was a young man that was talking about, well, she's only want to do that so that y'all can smoke weed. No, that's not what she's trying to do. And she said this during the last election.
Right.
What that would do is remove felonies from many men who have had felonies.
That's right.
For not only for the marijuana cases, but why should anybody have a felony on their record when it's tons of men making billions of dollars selling it legally now?
Correct.
So we got to look more into the issue, but that's another thing that I was going to bring up in terms of the false information that's out there that people is not understanding. And by people being criminalized with that, it disenfranchises a lot of people.
Right.
More so all the states that still have this, I think it's about 7 or 8, maybe
7 or 8
that have, if you have a felony, you can't vote for life.
Correct.
So if they got that removed from their,
well, it may get removed given that the historic election that we're in has someone who's been convicted of a felony on the ballot.
That's a thought.
It may get removed. You never know.
Yeah, yeah, it should. The other, what other issues that you have that you would just like to address?
Well, I also think that while we're looking at the top of the ticket, we also have to look at how the makeup for Congress and the courts are. Because so oftentimes, like I said earlier, people will vote for, you know, the governor, the president, whatever, but they won't vote for the Supreme Court justice, or they won't vote for, you know, the congressional or the senatorial candidates. And this whole thing, you know, folks are talking about term limits and how bad they are. What's happening at the State House is an example of how term limits are not good. Because with these term limits, you have lobbyists, you have other folks that are not experienced passing laws at the state level, while at the federal level, you have people with experience and then with seniority able to do more for their districts than before. I think so. And it goes back to us, as Petee says, we have to educate ourselves, and we shouldn't do it just in election time, but you educate yourself year round by checking to see what these people, once you get us elected, what are we doing for you? You know, do we come back into the community other than election time? Do we talk about issues and try to educate folks other than at election time? And I think more importantly than anything else, get off of watching the CNN, MSN, Fox News. Go and get the material, like Petee said, and read it yourself and ask questions. And don't wait till the last minute, because if you don't vote, your voice doesn't count. And the power, I keep thinking, I grew up at a time, I'm probably much older than anybody else in here, that there was a song, we got to give more power to the people. And that song every time it just keeps going in my head. We have so much power that we don't exercise it because we're too busy thinking we don't have any. And that's the lie that they've told us over and over and over and over. And I think we're too smart now to just keep it.
That's a perfect segue into this question I'm about to ask you. And I'd like both of you to take a stab at this. When I hear brothers and sisters say, he or she, and I'm guilty of it too. I've said this in the past. This particular politician didn't do enough specifically for Black people. I'm gonna tell you what I learned. Is Black people asking for something specific? Are we collectively coming together and asking for something specific? Or better yet, demanding for something specific.
Correct.
But when I look at all the other groups, that's what they did.
Yeah.
So that changed my mindset. I'm like, wait a minute. I don't recall us all coming together asking for something specific.
Well, Black women did after the 2020 election, which is why we have Ketanji Brown Jackson sitting on the United States Supreme Court. That's an example that should be a model, y'all, that we can follow for a whole bunch of other things, right? So, but we got to get together and say what that is. And that's the hard part. That's the organizing, Earl, that we have to do in our communities. We got to have some conversations at the community level. When we have town hall meetings, we can't be sitting there with 10 people when there are, 10,000 people in a neighborhood. We've got to get out. We got to make sure people know that we're having a town hall meeting so we can come together, determine what it is that we want to demand from politicians, right? And then go get it. Because we can get it, but we got to get organized. A. Philip Randolph Institute, my favorite labor leader, said at the banquet table of life, there are no reserved seats. You get what you can take and you keep what you can hold. And if you can't take anything or hold anything, you won't get anything.
And I'm going to tell you that this last, because I had a new district, I scheduled several what I call listening sessions throughout my new district. So I was in every place but the city of Toledo because that was my new district. Now that 2020, when after this, well, not even after, I'm already scheduling some stuff in preparation for next year. But Petee is absolutely right. Folks need to call the elected officials to a meeting, invite us. I should not have to open up the Blade, the Journal, or the Truth and see something going on. If I'm your elected representative, it is a two-way street, and I can put everything out that I can. I do a newsletter. If I can be someplace, I'm there because I think I can do a better job by knowing what the people want. But the people also have to speak up and say it is what they want. Because I all the time think I know everything, and I know nothing. But together, I will know a lot more because then I can speak with authority from the folks who are living in the trenches and what they need.
And I think a part of that, if we truly understand that we got to be engaged, learning is going back to just learning about the process and keeping abreast of what's going on. People couldn't come and say things like, I've done more for Black people since Abraham Lincoln.
That's right.
Because that might be like the next dumbest statement I ever heard in my lifetime.
Absolutely.
Because if you really researching this for the people that don't know, in my opinion, when you say you did something for somebody, it has to be something that you directly said, I'm doing this for Black people. But so Abraham Lincoln didn't do nothing for Black folks.
That's right.
What he did, we Black folks benefited in a sense from something that he did because his whole intention was to save the Union. So for that, I don't even want to say his name. For that man to say that, lets me know that maybe he don't even know his own history.
He knows what he knows. That is his history. That is his history, but that's not the true history.
Right.
Because I'm going to say this. Everybody got all upset with President Obama and said he didn't deliver. Well, we didn't deliver for him because that second term, he did not have he didn't have a Congress that he could work together with. They sat on their hands and said, we're going to do the best we can to limit his presidency. That's why we got them fools on the Supreme. And I shouldn't say that I'm an officer of the court, but those people that are on the Supreme Court that are doing all this other stuff, they were able to ram them through and get them on the Supreme Court because it's all part of the 2025 plan.
In fact, they blocked Obama.
Yes.
Senator Mitch McConnell said, no, you're not getting how in the world are you going to get a Supreme Court pick within 60 days of an election? He said that for Obama and then turned right around in the Trump administration and pushed through a nominee in 2 weeks.
Yes. Yeah.
This is hypocrisy and this is in our face, y'all. They are in our face.
But we're going to be worried about whether or not on a comment that's made in a rally, and we don't even know exactly what was said, but the rumor is, and that, she shouldn't have said whatever she said. What I'm saying is, what is she going to do? And what have we seen happen? I always say this, that past performance is an indicator of what's the future going to look like. So what has this man done in the past that really benefited our communities? Maybe there was a little bit of inflation reduction. Maybe there was this, that, and the other, but that's not because of his policies or what he did. It's because of the world economy and the things that are happening. So, it's like we try to find a really easy answer to a real complex problem.
So, you know what, you are real good at making me come up with questions because stuff that I was going to talk about anyway. The notion that his economy was better. How did we forget that part of the time that he was in his seat, that we was in a pandemic, right? And ain't no way on earth you gonna tell me the economy was better when we was in the pandemic, even though it crossed his presidency and Biden's presidency.
Yeah. I don't even understand how people think that they got that check from Donald Trump. He agreed that he wanted to sign it. First of all, most of us had direct deposits, so I don't even see my checks. Checks that get written to me because of direct deposit, I don't even see them. So because they go directly into me.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he vote against that first?
He's vocalized it. Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, was able to whip the Congress into shape to get them to put stimulus in the checking and savings accounts of people who were impacted by the deposit. That was an appropriation from Congress, not an executive order from Donald Trump.
Right. But everybody think Donald Trump made this executive order.
Correct.
Because he lies.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You tell a lie long enough, it'll become the truth.
Absolutely. So, hey, we got 15 days.
That's right.
We have 15 days, and we have a lot of work to do. Getting people out to vote, particularly the African American community. I'm gonna let you both say what you need to say to try to inspire some folks, but we're gonna do some other things after this interview, because we're not gonna just stop in here. But what would you like to say to the listening audience in closing?
Get a plan. You got 15 days, right? We don't know what's going to happen on November 5th, but there are literally 14 other days that you can vote early at the Lucas County Board of Elections, 3737 West Sylvania. If you're listening to us here in Lucas County, where we are, make a plan, figure out what you want to do. My granddaughter has called me for the 4th time to say, Nana, when are we voting? Because we vote as a family. And so we will be making our plan this week. I asked my husband this earlier today, are we voting on Saturday or Sunday? Are we voting on election day? because the grandkids want to know. Take your family. Don't go to the polls by yourself. Take your family with you to vote. Sometimes that's the only way it's going to happen. People need to be reminded. People got a lot of things going on in their lives, and election may not be their thing, but it's our thing. If it's your thing, grab your family and take them to the polls and make sure we're making plans to vote, because we don't want to be the ones that's sitting at home on the couch and this election be really, really close, and we could have made a difference in making the outcome of the election be different. So get a plan and make sure you go vote either the next 14 days or on Tuesday, November 5th.
And for me, it's that I keep thinking about, I'm into music, so I think about a Sweet Honey in the Rock. And that group says, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. And so I've been joking with folks that I'm not on the ballot this time, but I've been working just as hard as if my name was on the ballot, because our future and our life is on the ballot. And this is not some pie in the sky, just really crazy thing. It is true that if we do not vote and we have nothing to say about what happens to us, and we can't, and don't come talking to me, because one of the first things I ask people, did you vote? Like I asked my clients, are you registered? And before the registration was over with, we cannot rest, because if we rest, then we are going to be back to where we were, and 2025 will be a reality.
So with that, I would just simply end it like this. First, if you watch this show, make sure you share, like, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you do that first. But everything that we talked about in terms of this particular election is very, very important. Understanding the legislation, how it's going to impact you. If you don't know, make some calls and find out what you need to know. You have some people at the table that can help you understand everything you need to understand about the policy. In fact, after the show, we will put up Mrs. Talley's number from the Ohio Unity Coalition, who can assist you in understanding the policies, because that's what you do. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
So, but as for me, in terms of this federal election, I just keep thinking about one thing more than others. I keep thinking back to January 6th. And when I think about January 6th, I think about this quote by Sun Tools that says, "An evil man will burn down his nation just to rule over the ashes." I don't think it gets no clearer than that when I think about January 6th. So for me, some people ain't an option. But whatever you decide to do, make sure you do this one thing: get out and vote.
That's right.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I look forward to talking to you some more soon.
Yes.
We'd love to come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been Counterintelligence.
I've heard of Project 2025, and I've read inserts of Project 2025.
No, I haven't. Actually, I haven't heard about it at all.
No, I haven't heard about it.
I just heard Project 2025 was something that wasn't for us, or something to try to eliminate us slowly but surely. I could be wrong, but I know it ain't nothing good for us.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Hello, my name is Tyrone Howard, professor of education at UCLA. And what I'd like to bring to your attention are some of the concerning and disturbing aspects of Project 2025 that we in the Black community should be concerned about.
Federal education policy should be limited, and ultimately, the Federal Department of Education should be eliminated.
Outrageous. That's just complete nonsense. There's no clarity here as to what this really means. Are we eliminating resources? Are we eliminating things? And who is this being eliminated for? There's already a shortage of resources that young black kids get. What are we going to do if we don't provide the same education resources for everyone?
I think Project 2025 is something that's going to set us back about 20 years.
Wow. I don't think enough people are educated on just how bad this 2025 thing is.
Any discussions around race and racism are now being eliminated, which to me is erasing a core part of our history.
Black history is just not black history. It's actual the history. It's the history. It's not just black history, you know, because you can't go back in history and not find black people.
You're trying to erase the history, but you're not willing to necessarily erase the legislation that holds us down on a day-to-day basis. Got it. Insane. Okay. Cool. That's a wicked game that they're playing.
I feel like they're trying to just disintegrate everything, and I don't appreciate that at all.
No, this is crazy. This is actually crazy. This is worse than the other one.
It's overwhelming. I can't believe someone actually took the time to put together this document that is, it's absurd. It's absurd.
The death penalty has always been highly problematic because a disproportionate number of people who are on death row are black men. This would ensure their instant death.
No, I don't vote for genocide. I don't vote for genocide. I don't vote for black men being executed inappropriately and untimely. I don't vote for any of that, never have.
I don't believe in the death penalty personally. You know, I feel what he say, you know, vengeance is not ours, it's his.
This is the same group that believes that the lives of, you know, would-be children are considered. And then to become like judicial hitmen, right? It's like, it's crazy because you can't use the same God for both of them.
We have a lot of individuals who are obviously doing, you know, time in prison in our jail systems without having gone through the proper channels of being allowed a, you know, proper due process.
What it does really is just let black men know that we're not really, we're not respected. We're still not looked at as human. This is still like an extermination.
I think the only thing that really scares me about this is the conservative administration should do everything possible to obtain the finality for the 44 prisoners currently on death row. That seems to say even if they're innocent, kill them. That's scary.
Liberal states have now become sanctuaries for abortion tourism. Health and Human Services should use every available tool, including the cutting of funds, to ensure that every state reports exactly how many abortions take place. It seems like they're trying to cover every door to make sure a woman doesn't have the right to choose what happens with her body. And I think it's just crazy.
I feel like they should have their choice of how they want to treat their bodies and do what they want with their bodies, so it shouldn't be up to no government to do that.
This is an important issue that we should all be concerned about because women's rights are being taken away. This takes us to illegal and backroom abortions where women put their lives at risk in ways that we haven't seen for centuries in this country.
They've been through a great deal of suffrage, so this is just another thing to add on to more of that suffrage. And I feel like they should have their choice of how they want to treat their bodies and do what they want with their bodies, so it shouldn't be up to no government to do that. No, I'm not, this is not something I want to vote for at all. I wouldn't vote for it.
I want my daughters to be able to grow up. They're 6 to 12. I want them to be able to grow up and have freedom of rights.
He's already said he wants to do a national abortion ban, so this is just proof positive.
The Secretary should phase out all existing income-driven repayment plans by making new loans, including consolidation loans, ineligible. There should be no loan forgiveness.
This means that your loans will be due soon, and many of them with interest and penalty and fees, so more money out of your pocket. Why is that important? Because black people are twice as likely to have larger student loan debts than people from other races, which means that it only delays the ability to purchase homes and other wealth-building strategies.
No loan forgiveness it's pretty scary
if it's no forgiveness and if all the borrowers should have to repay their loans, some people are not in a position to do that. And I don't think a lot of people can recover from the debt that college is putting on people. So, you know, you be putting kids in a position where it's almost impossible for them to win.
The next administration should work with Congress to amend Title VII to prohibit Equal Employment Opportunity Commission from collecting EEO-1 data and any other social classifications in employment for both private and public workplaces.
What this means is that we will no longer have protections in the workplace that prevent discrimination, racism, or unfair treatment of people of color.
Wow. Oh yeah, we can't have that. We can't have that at all.
Egregious, overwhelming, outrageous, unfair. That's how I describe it.
May I speak candidly? It's basically a handbook for slavery.
I think that we need to vote, get out and spread the word to make sure that this doesn't happen.
I used to think that black men could never be presidents of companies like Xerox and Microsoft, but a black man became the president. This is rolling back all these things that were already established. We should find more ways to be more inclusive, men of color, women of color. I can't imagine an administration that would take us back. I could never support it.
Repeal harmful health policy, and that's under the Obama and Biden administration, such as Medicare shared saving programs and the Inflation Reduction Act.
I never thought that we would come to a time like this in America. You know, just sad.
The Inflation Reduction Act basically is a provision that will have an impact on Medicare, which would mean higher prescription costs for seniors and more money for Big Pharma, plain and simple.
I'm in a wheelchair, and I do got Medicare. So they're trying to take Medicare for us? I would be asked out because I don't have no care for my wheelchair.
Honestly, based on this, like honestly, thinking about, again, not even thinking necessarily about myself, but you know, my grandmother, my grandfather specifically, this would directly affect him, which would be insane.
So what it means to me is poor people that have pre-existing conditions are in a world of trouble if Trump gets in office. I mean, for him to say he want to get rid of Obamacare, and when they asked him the question, what's your plan? He said he has a concept. That's the scariest thing ever.
And I'm an asthmatic, you know? Like, I know what it's like to be suffering at night because, you know, you're wheezing and you don't have your inhaler. And I mean, come on now, like, it's hard to, I guess, express like almost like the anger. I'm shaking a little bit, you know?
Reading this is definitely the most important election ever.
The corporate income tax rate should be reduced to 18%.
So that means the people that make less money gonna pay higher taxes? No, it don't make me want to vote for Trump.
What this means is less taxes and greater profit for large corporations and fewer wages and less income for everyday workers. We already see a massive gap between what workers take home and what large corporations take home. This will only widen that gap.
So the hard-working people get less, and the people that don't work as much get everything.
If you're middle class or lower, you barely making ends meet, for real. The people with the most money should pay the most money. I mean, that's like common sense, right?
It sounds like they're stopping, or really they're adding more money to their pockets by stopping us from being able to save money.
This is wrong. This is just wrong. It shouldn't be this way.
They don't care about the little people. They just care about just making more money, whatever that looks like.
I would say take your time to read what they're pushing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's really cool to watch a debate and hear a cute little tagline from time to time. But when you see what the agenda is really about, what I'm saying, you're probably gonna think twice.
It's not good for the black man at all. Basically, any man of color, it's not. And I would tell them to educate themselves on Project 2025.
At this point, I don't even know if there's a message I could give to them, right? Like, it's blatant, it's obvious. What I usually tell them is you're selling yourself back into slavery for a few dollars. Because most black men, when they talk about they're gonna vote for Trump, always talk about dollars.
Everybody just thinking that Trump was a good president from EDD, PPP, that Trump was gonna look out for the blacks.
I mean, look, I don't think Trump really honestly cares about anybody back there anyway.
I plan to vote this next presidential election, absolutely. People die for the actual right to vote. So if you have a chance to vote, you should.
This is my second time voting, and since I've been free. And to me, and anybody around me that know what I went through, fighting to get home, and know what's going on, like, we have to vote. We just have to vote.
When I grew up, my grandfather was from the South, and it was very hard for them to vote. So no matter what, vote. We have to vote. It's important. I don't care if you gotta stand in line 5-6 hours, vote.
And at this point, it's really not even about politics. It's about character. Like, the dude is just a horrible person, right? And that's what it boils down to for me. It's beyond politics at this point.
So many elections before, black men, women didn't vote very much. We have to vote at this election. It's going to be a game changer for all of us. I use the term, I have to stop this insanity. Not only am I going to vote, but I'm going to encourage all my friends to do so.